Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, and this is very exciting. And on this beautiful Sunday, or I should say, we are going to be talking about Spirited Away. And who is we? Well, I have the privilege of being joined by Shawn from the channel Lost in the Reel. Shawn, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ryan. I am so excited to talk about Spirited Away.
Yeah, Spirited Away was directed by Hayao Miyazaki. We all know who he is. Probably a comfortable conversation for the greatest of all time. And this movie was released in 2001. And I think in terms of Ghibli movies, this is probably one of the most famous, if not the most famous Ghibli movie of all time. Fair to say?
Yes, absolutely.
Not only was and is this movie considered to be one of Ghibli's very best, it was also one of the most successful movies in Japanese history, both critically and financially. It wasn't number one until it was taken over by Demon Slayer Megan Train, which just left theaters like a couple weeks ago. It won Best Animated Feature at the Academy Awards for that year, which that's a pretty big accomplishment. And then on the New York Times did a list of the best movies of the 21st century so far. And this movie was at number two. Shawn, you want to take a guess what was number one?
The Lord of the Rings.
No, it was There Will Be Blood.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I can definitely see that. I love that film.
Yeah, I love it too, but it's just crazy to think that Spirited Away is like here and There Will Be Blood is like way over there in terms of like conflicting styles and themes and just all across the board.
Yeah, they're completely different films, but I mean, I would put it above. I would put Spirited Away above There Will Be Blood, but I mean, everyone has their own opinions, I guess.
Well, I've only seen There Will Be Blood once, and while
Mm.
I did love it, I do understand. So what I
Yeah.
thought would be cool, Shawn, before jumping into the movie, is talking about our first experiences with this movie, seeing it for the first time. So, Shawn, do you remember when you saw this movie for the first time?
Yeah, I'll never forget it actually. So I started my Hayao Miyazaki journey when I was very young. My dad found My Neighbor Totoro at the bottom of a Walmart VHS bin and bought it super cheap. So when this film was coming out, it had just won the Academy Award, and I think I was 12 at the time that this movie came out. And I just remember being like, Mom, please take me to go see this movie. And she's like, Shawn, that looks really weird. I don't know about it. But I ended up dragging her to see it. And she actually loved the film. And I was disappointed at the time by it because I just thought it was so out there and maybe I wasn't ready for it yet. But as time has passed, I've just fallen in love with this film.
That's so funny. It's like you were the one who were like, Mom, we need to see this. Like, we
Yeah,
need to. And then you were the one who were like, it's fine. And she is like,
yeah.
oh my God, that was amazing.
She was all about it.
Just such a hilarious like dynamic. And then as far as my first viewing goes, mine is far more boring. I was actually planning out my I Finally Watched series like in its like primordial stages. And I knew that I wanted to include a lot of Ghibli movies. I had no plans on reviewing all of them. I just was like, oh, I'll just review the famous ones. And Spirited Away was going to be the first one in that series. It turned out to be Goodfellas, but Spirited Away was one that I was going to start in March of 2020. We all know what happened in March of 2020. So I had to do a
Yep.
brief pivot. But in 2021, I made a promise to myself to make the I Finally Watched series a big part of my channel. And I figured myself, Spirited Away is my white whale. I'm going to get to that eventually. And so here we are. So I think the grandstanding and the hot dogging is out of the way. Shawn, you want to dive into the movie?
Yeah, do we want to talk about what it's about or just our feelings on it?
Well, we can give like brief like in brief what we liked and disliked, but I thought as we go chronologically, we'll cross the themes bridges when we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I'd like to start out with, and probably one of the biggest reasons why I love this film so much, is I am a sucker for any film that transports me to another world. So I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings nerd. And I put this film in that category, being every time I watch it, I feel completely transported to another realm. And during that 2 hours, I forget about everything that's going on around me, and I just am a part of that world. So that's one reason why Spirited Away is so special for me.
Yeah, and talk about a totally different realm. I mean, literally, the first scene in the movie is like early 2000s Japan, and then literally as soon as Chihiro crosses the bridge, it's like just sheer madness, delicious madness, but madness nonetheless. So I think that's a good place to start. The beginning, that is a very good place to start, in the words of
Yeah.
Julie Andrews. The movie opens with a family that ends up getting lost, and I wrote in my notes, I guess they must not have had the GPS back then. So they end up taking a wrong turn, and the little girl, Chihiro, voiced by, and I want to get this actress's name right, Davy Chase, eventually stumbles upon the spirit realm. And just a bit of a fun fact: this actress not only voices this character, but also the Ring Girl from The Ring and Lilo from Lilo and Stitch. And wow, it floored me looking at her IMDb. Is like, there's no way she voiced the same. Oh, she did.
Yeah.
Because the Ring
What
Girl
has
is
she
like,
done since all of those things, though? That's what I'd like to know. She like disappeared off the map.
that's a good question. It's like she had like a good run throughout like the early 2000s, and then she's been in pretty much nothing. It feels like
Yeah,
smaller bit roles. But she's really
definitely.
good here. I really enjoyed her performance. I don't know about you, but I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I love Davy Chase in this film. When I first saw it, and this has been a complaint for a lot of people that I've read, that they think that the character of Chihiro and Davy Chase playing her, the character is very whiny. And complains a lot, which I can see, but there is so much nuance to her performance if you really uh, take a take a look and a listen to the performance. I think there's much more there than just a whiny little 10-year-old girl.
I can see how she starts off the movie being a little whiny, but literally as the movie goes on, she becomes like just tougher and tougher and tougher as she encounters all the giant babies and just the dragons. And we'll get there when we get there. But
Definitely.
um, I found in my research that Chihiro was based kind of liberally off of the 10-year-old daughter of this movie's producer named Seiji Okuda.
Mhm.
I think I got that right, hopefully. And Hayao Miyazaki actually created Spirited Away because he found inspiration, because he and his children and the children of his most frequent collaborators would go to this house in Japan. This, I believe it was a house in the woods, to vacation. And Miyazaki just was like, you know, I'm feeling the architecture and just I'm feeling the ambiance. Let's write some. And there's more nuance to the themes, and we'll cross that bridge, obviously. But just think about what a trip to the mountains or the forest might do for your thinking process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really cool. I think definitely getting away and being in the wilderness can really open up a creator's mind to something like that. But I also know too that Miyazaki, he doesn't even have the full story formed as he is making the film. So I love that, just like it, like literally like a little sproutling like hatched at this cabin in the woods, and then obviously it grew from there into what it is.
Started off as a little mustard seed, and then it just
Yeah.
grew and grew and grew. So then we cut to Chihiro and her parents, and they stumble upon this old abandoned theme park. Then they go into the theme park, and it is filled with the most delicious food you could ever imagine. Like, seriously, somebody needs to make like a scrapbook or an art book or something of like Ghibli food, because it would sell. Like every perfect frame, that Twitter account, One Perfect Shot, should just be
Mm.
nothing but Ghibli food for like a day or a week. They would not be.
Every time I watch a Ghibli movie, I always have like a craving for sweets afterwards, no matter what.
It's pork for me, but the sweets look delicious as well.
Sweets, yeah.
So the parents find the food. They're like, free food, let's dig in. And they start to eat. They eat a lot of it, and then they turn into pigs. And yeah, one of the more non-subtle themes of the movie is basically the greediness of man. And I'm not just speculating on that. Miyazaki literally said in an interview, humans were greedy. And so turning Chihiro's parents into pigs was very kind of on the nose, but it got the point across. It kind of reminded me of Pink Floyd and their song Pigs. It's kind of like in the
Okay, yeah.
same vein for me personally. I don't know about you, Shawn.
Yeah. I definitely, I kind of like that it's on the nose, to be honest. I think because there are so many maybe ambiguous themes throughout this film, it's kind of nice to have one of them be so on the nose and be like, yep, they're pigs now because they're greedy. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, this movie is definitely a melting pot of just various things, and
Mhm.
it's especially Yubaba, but we'll get there.
Mhm.
Next, after Chihiro's parents get turned into pigs, she experiences the spirit realm for the first time, and she runs into Haku, who will basically be her closest ally throughout this whole journey. And I like this character, Shawn. I don't know about you, but I thought he was really cool.
Yeah, no, Haku is one of my favorite characters. I love this world too because there are so many fully realized characters that populate this world, which I'm sure we'll get talking about a lot of them. But Haku especially, he has such a good heart, but he's also a very flawed young man as well. And yeah, I just love him. And when I was a kid, I was like, he turns into a dragon, I'm in.
Yeah, yeah, you see him like basically you turn him into this dragon and you're just like, wow, he should get his own movie like The Cat Returns.
Yes, I would be into that for sure.
So then Haku basically gives Chihiro some advice, basically saying you're gonna need to get a job with Yubaba. If you can get into her good graces, then you should get out of here just fine. Well, unfortunately, it's a bit more complicated than that. And let's talk about Yubaba for a second, because
Yes.
she she is definitely at least in the Ghibli movies that I've seen, she's probably among the more intimidating villains. I mean, at least for me. Am I too off base on that?
I don't think you are off base at all. And it's really funny because she is so intimidating, but her stature and her character design are so silly. So someone maybe think that, oh, she's not intimidating. She's a short, squatty old woman with a large nose. But there's just something about her and how she's so unpredictable. You have no idea if she's going to be kind and like excited for Chihiro, or if she's going to be very off-putting and like lecture her, or like she's all over the place. So you have no idea what to expect from Yubaba.
Many eagle-eyed viewers will notice that her, I want to say, penthouse is basically laden with kind of Western furniture and stylings, and
Mm-hmm.
she always wears Western type dresses. In my research, that was a conscious decision because Miyazaki wanted to show that Yubaba's style of favoring the more Western style of art and fashion was clashing towards the more Eastern style of things, which leaned more towards minimalism. And
Right.
it's literally a styles clash because here's Yubaba with the magic and just and the minions and the three heads running around the
Mm-hmm. They're awesome. I love them.
I have no idea what those things are, but I was like, man, something about these three heads.
Yeah, exactly. They're so funny. I don't know why, but
And the
maybe I
giant
think it is the voice that comes out of them. They're grunts.
I remember the first time I saw it, I'm like, three what are these three heads doing here? And this time around, I was like, okay, I'm prepared for it. I was not prepared. And
That's funny that you bring that up because I think that is totally what Spirited Away is. Like the first time you watch it, you're like, "What is going on in this movie? Like this is craziness," and you just got to go with it. That's what I say for anyone watching this film for the first time. It might be a little disorienting, all of the the craziness going on, but just go with it and submit yourself to it. Like those three heads, just go with it.
this movie's like jazz. It improvises and it just at some point you're just like, all right, I'm just here for it. I'm here for it. So then,
Exactly. I love that.
to Yubaba's great chagrin, she gives Chihiro a job on one condition. She takes Chihiro's name, renaming her Sen. And then and then I'm going to use Chihiro and Sen interchangeably, more than likely. So Sen gets handed off to Lin. And at first, when I first saw this movie, I was like, am I going to like you or are you just bitter? And it
Yeah.
turns out she's just bitter. And by the end of the movie, I actually found her quite enjoyable. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I personally I love Lynn because you she seems real to you because it would make sense that this woman would be like, who is this young girl, this young human? Like she's in my space, she's slow, she's never worked before, she's frustrated with Chihiro. But then you can see that she really does have a good heart and she wants to protect Chihiro as well, and she becomes a great asset and friend to her.
You have a feeling that she's trying to help Chihiro wherever she can, but she also
Mhm.
has to think about, her life because she doesn't want to get turned into a pig. So it's like
Right.
it's this give and take of trying to help while also protecting your neck at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely it's realistic to me.
So then so then Sen becomes a part of this bathhouse, and I'll talk more about the bathhouse in a little bit because actually it was upon this rewatch that I concocted a bit of a theory about the bathhouse, but we'll get there when we get there. Sen is not very good at her job. She's behind on everything, and it just nobody treats her with any kind of respect. The one hope that she gets is Haku takes Chihiro to her parents, who are now pigs. And when I saw this, I was like, this reminds me of that point in The Office where Michael Scott is like, Corbin needs you to tell the differences between these two photos, and then it cuts to Pam saying they're the same picture. And
I
like
love that.
it's like they're
That's great
pigs. Like
writing.
unless they're wearing like a special color I'm not seeing, they look the same to me.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, I actually think that scene is really really emotional because I remember seeing it when I was a kid, and I remember just the idea of losing your parents to all of a sudden they're pigs, and then it's kind of like think like all of a sudden you're not able to recognize who your parents are anymore. Not only have you lost them, but now they're unrecognizable, and it's very frightening, like for a 10-year-old kid. And then that whole breakdown scene afterwards I think is really sweet, where Haku gives her the little rice cakes that he's put a curse on. I love that.
I thought it looked like a dumpling,
A
but yeah,
dumpling.
that particular scene I was like, oh, this is brutal because it does set on Chihiro that she's basically stuck there and she's gotta like pull an Andy Dufresne and climb her way through the river of crap to come out clean on the other side. And
It's
I'm
true.
totally talking about different movies, but I think it does apply there. So not now we see we're into the bathhouse stuff, we're fully into there. And then we see our first appearance of the no face. And I think it's pretty safe to say that the no face is the most iconic part of this movie. If you show a random person the no face, even if they've never seen Spirited Away, they're like, oh, hey, that's the thing from Spirited Away. And
Hmm.
I the theories about the no face are very well varied, for lack of a better word. Shawn, do you have any particular theory on if is the no face like a spirit? Is it a friendly spirit? Because I have my thoughts, but what about you?
No Face is difficult for me because every time I watch it, I feel something different. Obviously, with the first time I saw it, No Face was absolutely terrifying. And
Yeah.
when he like puts out his hand and he's like, "Oh," oh, or whatever. Like just that noise that comes out of him is just ugh. But I think that he's a mix of all different types of spirits. I don't know what's your thought on him, and I'll
Well,
piggyback off of that.
so fast forwarding slightly to where the no face starts getting really greedy and passes the
Mhm,
gold around and starts eating everything, including the people.
mhm.
I made a note saying that the no face has a certain innocence that at a certain point gets corrupted. So I
Yep.
think my theory is that the no face represents innocence,
Okay.
and because being in that bathhouse, that innocence gets corrupted. And playing
Mhm,
off of what I teased earlier about the bathhouse, my theory about the bathhouse is that this bathhouse, a place where you supposedly are getting clean,
mhm.
makes you dirtier all at the same time. Because if you see any of the people in this bathhouse, they're not nice. They're not nice to Chihiro. They're not nice to pretty much anyone. And it just feels like that was the vibe I got. In a place where you're supposed to get clean, you feel like you're dirtier leaving it than when you came in.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting thought. I've heard some people say that the bathhouse is like a child prostitution ring. And so that would also make sense with your no face theory. And I like that because no face does start out very innocent and it's almost like a kid going like here you go, take it. Like, I think that's really interesting. And the fact that the no face is almost malleable because once he sees everyone taking the gold and he takes it for himself, then he wants more and he wants more, and then the frog tries to take it from him and then he eats the frog and kind of starts becoming more corrupt. And I really like that, the whole idea of that bathhouse being just a place of corruption and it's corrupting the no face.
There's a scene a little later on where we see the stink spirit for the first time, and I'll talk about that coming up next. But you see the no face being active for the first time, trying to help Chihiro by giving her pretty much all the tokens to try and get as much water into that large tub as possible. So there is good in the no face. It's
Yeah.
just it's it's an incredibly innocent spirit, and and by being in this bathhouse, a place where you're supposed to get clean, it gets dirty on its way out. And by the end, he does find redemption thanks to Zaniba, Yubaba's sister, but that's for the ending. Let's
Yeah.
talk about the stink spirit for a second, because
Yes, let's do it.
when I first saw this thing, I felt so sorry for it, and and everyone was just like, "Oh God, it's a stink spirit." And I guess I could see their point, but I mean, the thing just wanted a bath. Like that's
Yeah.
all it really wanted. I just felt so sorry for it, and especially this time around, because that speaks for the animation of this movie. The animation is so brilliant that
Mhm.
you literally see Chihiro with chills up and down her body,
Yep.
just repulsed by this stench. And she's like, "This way, sir." And she's like holding onto the token like this, and she's like walking away, just be like, "I would rather be anywhere else but here right now."
Yeah.
But when the stink spirit finally gets his bath and just the water gets dumped on him, and then Chihiro sees, oh, it's got something stuck in him, and they drag it out and drag it out and drag it out, and when you hear the pop and it just goes, and then the spirit gets all clean, it's one of the most satisfying scenes that I've seen in a movie ever, because
I was just gonna say that. It's like popping a pimple. Like there's something about that scene. It's just like when the air gets lifted out, there's just the sound and then everything, and then all of a sudden it's so clean and the animation of the water around her is it just is so pure. I don't know. I love that whole entire sequence. I think it's incredible.
yeah, they pull out basically the entire like riverbed out of this poor spirit. And
Hmm.
my research, I found that this was actually done on purpose. This spirit
Hmm.
is literally meant to represent a dirty lake, pretty much. And when you see the clean spirit for the first time, he's like, "Well done." It's just so good. And then he just flies out of that bathhouse. He's like on clouds 9 through 15. It's a brilliant scene. probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. It's so satisfying. It just, I can't really put it into words.
Yeah, that whole scene too, just the way that it's structured is so intense, even though it's like so otherworldly because it's a stink spirit and it's a spirit that's trying to get clean. But just the whole idea of like the whole scene when she goes and she gets the token, puts it in, and then the water's overflowing. And I love when Yubaba is basically like, that is no stink spirit. Like it gives me goosebumps every time because it's like, what is it then? Like, what is this thing that's inside that, Chihiro is now, trying to clean? The whole scene is just, it's so good.
Yeah, and and for a movie that kind of achieves balance of like kind of sillier stuff and very dark stuff, this is definitely on the sillier side, but it's all done so well that it's just like an incredible scene. You could do an entire analysis on like that scene alone,
Oh yeah.
and it would just do gangbusters. But then
Yeah, and
this,
I think it's really I always expect some kind of environmental message from a Miyazaki film, and I think that's very much so what we're getting in that scene. He touches upon it a lot more, like in Mononoke and whatnot, but I always appreciate Miyazaki's environmental messages, and just to see it like that poor spirit, that has been trapped and just cluttered and corrupted by all of this garbage and trash. Like it disgusts you, which I think is exactly what Miyazaki wanted.
yeah, especially in Mononoke, the environmental themes are definitely more on the nose, but that was definitely what he was going for. It's more downplayed here, but it's
Mhm.
definitely present if you're looking hard enough for it.
Yes.
So then we cut next to the whole no face thing gets corrupted. We talked about that previously. And eventually the no face gets out of control, and not even Yubaba can stop him. While all of this is happening, Chihiro sees Haku being attacked by paper. And at first I'm like, okay, I've gotten a paper cut before, but how is this stopping a dragon? And then it's like, oh, this is magic paper. This is not good.
Oh, and there's like so many of them. Every time I like that scene happens, it feels almost like I've been watching too many Saw movies, but uh, just like something that would be like a Saw trap, like all of these paper cuts. It's just like it gives me. I hate it.
Kind of, since you're such a Harry Potter fan, it kind of reminded me of in Sorcerer's Stone, where Harry's being chased by all the keys. They're
Oh
they're
yeah.
they're in I think the second or third room, and they got to find the right key, but all the keys
Hmm.
are flying. And when Harry grabs
Yeah.
the one key, the rest of the keys are like, "Not with my baby, you don't," and they just go straight after him. It's just it's chalk that up to objects you don't think are that hurtful, and then they start flying at you. Then business is about to pick up.
Yeah, that's actually a really good analogy because the keys in Sorcerer's Stone also almost they're inanimate objects that almost have characters, like they're almost characters in and out of themselves. And the same goes here, even though they're like little pieces of paper, they almost have their own characters to them, which is really cool.
Oh yeah, agreed. That's what I've always thought about them all the time.
Yeah.
So this paper takes quite a number on Haku, and it's brutal stuff. And then we meet Zeniba or Zeniba Zeniba. I don't
Zuniba,
know.
yeah, I say Zuniba, yeah.
We meet Zeniba, who is Yubaba's twin, and I don't know how to feel about this character. At first, I was like, "Are you a good guy, a bad guy, like a tweener?" Like, I don't know, Shawn. What do you think?
I think she's very much so in between. I think she's a lot like her sister. I would say her sister Yubaba is obviously far worse. But Zuniba too, she's right in between there. There's some really good in her, and she has a good heart. But at the same time, she has her own sinister reasons for doing what she's doing, I believe.
She kind of seems chaotic neutral to me.
Hmm. Okay, yeah.
So then it eventually reaches a boiling point with No Face. It gets too fat to the point where he's like, I've I've eaten everything. What do I do now? And so Chihiro's like, here, eat this dumpling. And it's the emetic dumpling. And he starts puking up everything in this piece. Like, it's just,
Gross.
it's not a pretty, it's not a pretty sight. And so then, excuse me, then Chihiro gets a new mission from Zeniba to return this golden seal, or no, wait. Chihiro gets a new mission from the Boilermaker and the train tickets to go to Zeniba to return this golden seal that Haku had stolen from her. And then this all leads to the train scene. And this is probably the most iconic scene in the movie. Another one of those where if you showed a still image of this to somebody, be like, Spirited Away. This scene is just beautiful. Like, even on a rewatch, I knew it was coming, and I still did not anticipate just the beauty of this train. It looked like a train that was like in like the 40s or 50s, like around this time. There's definitely a lot of themes of Miyazaki playing into more of like old-timey architecture and playing more into like the old school kind of thing, and that shines like a diamond here.
Absolutely. It reminds me, though they're very different, it's just like scenes of travel in Miyazaki movies. It reminds me of just the wonder of the cat bus scene in My Neighbor Totoro. Just like this idea of almost like when you're a child and you're going to a far off place and it's kind of scary, but also really exciting at the same time. I get that feeling because, Chihiro doesn't know what to expect, when she gets to her destination, and you feel that. It's really cool, and it's a beautiful scene to look at.
It also, No Face begins the road to redemption, if you will, after throwing up pretty much everything. It's just like, Chihiro, can I go with you? And she's like, yeah, come on. And so they go together, and it's great. And then we cut to Haku, who has healed himself and catches Yubaba at a kind of at a vulnerable moment when she's trying to deal with the massive baby. Like, seriously, this baby is like this big, and it's like, I shouldn't ask questions. But then Haku basically says, Yubaba, I want you to let Chihiro go. And it's like, okay, but Chihiro has to pass one final test. And so Haku's like, all right, I'll be right back. And so then we cut to Zeniba's house in Swamp Bottom, and I just love this house. I love the house.
I do too.
I love the food. The food somehow looks even better here. Especially that cheesecake looking thing, or it's like a sponge cake. It looks amazing. Even No Face is like, I'm not even sure I have a stomach and I want to eat this.
Yeah.
So then Chihiro returns the seal to Zeniba, and Chihiro is like, I have a mission I gotta accomplish. And No Face stays with Zeniba, and this completes I keep saying his, it's road to redemption, going from innocent to fat and greedy back down to innocent again.
Yeah.
I think you can make essays about just the No Face character arc by itself. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And going off of that whole innocence thing, I think No Face, his road to redemption is really interesting because, like you said, he does become corrupt and he becomes greedy, which is kind of, a major theme of the film, greed and capitalism. But the fact of the matter is I like the idea that you can always change, you can always be better. And in this case, No Face is able to redeem himself, and he's able to let go of that corruption and that greed and go back to that place that he was at before. Maybe he will never be the same as he was at the beginning, but he's at least, redeemed himself.
He's older and wiser, if that's a thing in the spirit realm.
Exactly.
So then Chihiro's on her way back to the bathhouse when she meets up with Haku, and through a series of events, Haku gets his curse lifted off of him, and he remembers that he is the spirit of the Yahaku River, which was, I can't remember if it was bulldozed upon or just built upon, but basically he says that's the reason why I can't remember my home because it's no more. And upon this rewatch, that hit me because I was like, the first time I was like, okay, what's up with the curse? It's never really explained. This time around, I was like, oh, he was a human, and then it was like, it's it it's a bit like nuanced, and
It is.
it's very nuanced. But once you pick up on that thread, that loose thread, it's like, all right, where is this going? And it's like seeing that loose thread on like a wool blanket. You just keep pulling it and pulling it and pulling it
Mhm.
and pulling
Yeah, it is so sad because, I mean, once again, kind of coming back to Miyazaki's environmental messaging, like messaging, but if you think about all of the, the trees that have been torn down, animals' homes, so many different people's homes that have been torn down because of greed, because they've wanted to, in this case, in this movie, they, we're going to have a theme park. And then, I think they say something about the theme park like lost funding or something, or there was some kind of like bank collapse. The theme park was put in place of that. It could have been a river. And that's the same thing with Haku. He lost his home and he doesn't have a place. He's a displaced spirit now who doesn't really have a place in this world anymore. And that's really sad.
it really is. It's like the lowest of the low when you feel like you don't have a place in this world. It is just
Mm-hmm.
it's literally like it's rock bottom. It's like the bedrock beneath rock bottom, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then we get to the climax where Chihiro is set to take on Yubaba's final task, and Yubaba's final task is see those pigs over there, pick your parents out of them, and you can let them go. And
She's terrible.
so bad. She gives Jigsaw a run for his money.
Exactly.
So Chihiro is like, none of these are my parents. And Yuba was like, final answer, and you hear the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire theme kick in. And Chihiro's like, yep, final answer. And the contract goes and Chihiro is set free. And it's just like one of those triumph moments where you're like, yes, she made it out, or at least for me. I hope it was for you.
Oh, absolutely. And she was put through hell and back to get to this point where she could finally go home with her parents. Haku will never be able to do that. He'll never have a home again, but she will have a home with her parents again. But she had to adapt and change and grow throughout this experience to make this happen, and that shows what a strong little girl she is.
Yeah, she starts off at one place, and then literally through all of this, she ends up in a much different place with a lot more wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's a story arc that's been done numerous times, but I mean, it's never really failed before that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and I mean it is fully realized here. Like you see her when she's over here, and her journey. It makes sense why she is the way she is at the end of the film, how she's grown because of everything that's happened in between.
So then the movie comes to an end with Chihiro returning to the real world, and her parents like, "Where were you? We got to go meet the movers."
That's the worst.
And it was upon this rewatch that I sat to myself, wait, was this like all in her head, or did this like actually happen? Because in my research, I found that this movie was patterned very much off of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, and how that was kind of played off as a bit of a hallucination. I was thinking to myself, did Chihiro make this up? Are we supposed to think she made it up? Do you think, Shawn, do you think that she actually experienced all of this? Or maybe it was like a Wizard of Oz thing where she like hit her head and then
That's a
woke up?
really good question. I believe that it happened, but I'm usually always the one that goes in the direction of like, yes, it happened. It wasn't in their head. But I do love that Miyazaki does this with the film, that he opens it up to interpretation. Because have you ever seen the movie Pan's Labyrinth?
Yes, it's been a while, but yeah, that's a great movie. Guillermo del Toro, awesome.
Mhm. My favorite film of all time, and it's very much like this one. It's a journey about a young girl and the whole character development, character growth, and at the end, it's very similar as well. It could have all happened, or maybe it was all in her head, and I like that because as a younger person, you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, that for sure happened. But as an adult, there's more layers, and now you're a grown adult, and as adults, we tend to maybe not believe in fantastical elements as much as we used to. So we can look at it as an adult and be like, oh yeah, that was in her head, but there's still an interesting character arc and everything to enjoy. So I think it is very much so up to interpretation for a reason, but I do believe that it did happen.
I'm of the same mind. I believe it did happen. However, it was upon this rewatch that I was thinking to myself, okay, Chihiro is in a theme park, a rundown theme park. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's like a ride back there, like an It's a Small World type of ride, which features like Yubaba, but like as like a puppet, and like these all these other characters, these heroes and villains, but they're a part of this ride, and maybe she was walking through it and be like, and kind of like imagining it, kind of like a Calvin and Hobbes kind of thing. It
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I believe it, but I was thinking to myself, a certain somebody could watch this movie and think that, oh, it's just a child's wild imagination getting lost in a rundown theme park, if you will. I do believe it
yeah,
happened, but I think that theory could possibly be somewhat tangible.
yeah, absolutely. And I like that that theory can work and it would all make sense. And then also our theory that it did happen also can make sense and work too, Either way, it's up to you to really decide. And I love when films allow its audience to make up their minds for themselves.
Absolutely. And so at the end of the day, I think that I understand now more than ever why this is like the figurehead for spirit for Studio Ghibli. Whenever people
Yes.
think of Ghibli, this is like the first movie they think of, like this or My Neighbor Totoro. And
Yep.
now that I'm personally this deep into Studio Ghibli's canon, I get why some movies are spotlighted and some others are not so much
Oh yeah.
for very
I mean,
limited.
you had a couple of movies. I think maybe just a couple of Studio Ghibli's ago, where there was like two or three in a row that you were like, I don't know about this. Like the quality's kind of dipped, right?
It was Ocean Waves, Pompako, and
Hmm.
then Whisper of the Heart was like, okay, now we're cooking with
Yeah,
gas.
exactly. Yeah,
And then my neighbors the Amadas, which I thought was underrated. And
I
then
completely agree. I love that movie.
and then this movie was like, okay. And now I'm of the mind that Studio Ghibli has a pretty consistent standard of quality. At their worst, they're still really, really good, but at their
Hmm.
best, they could comfortably be in the greatest of all time conversation in terms of animation all around.
Absolutely. I think the reason that this is the touchstone of Studio Ghibli is really just because of how many different levels that this works on. And this is a movie that you will not get everything from the first viewing. There's no way that you can appreciate every little intricate detail in its first viewing. And like you said, there are different things that you've caught on now watching it over again. And that happens every single time you watch Spirited Away. You get something new, you get something different to take with you afterwards. And I think that's why it's such a special film.
Absolutely. So, on my rating scale of amazing, great, good, forgettable, and horrid, I'd say you're an amazing, right?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
I concur. This is an amazing movie, comfortably among the greatest animated movies of all time. I
Mhm.
think when the history books are written by someone with way more time on their hands, I think this will be at least in the top three of the greatest animated movies of all time, regardless of country or company or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is Spirited Away is the definition of endless imagination and the definition of what you can do with animation. And I think it sets that boundary. And I don't know if it's been crossed since Spirited Away came out.
I agree. I've I've now caught up with everything from their beginning up to Spirited Away. Easily, Spirited Away is like my favorite, followed by Kiki's Delivery Service and My Neighbor Totoro. Those are like, surprisingly enough, the three ones that everybody talks about consistently.
Yep, and for good reason.
So one last thing before we take it on home, I have a
Yep.
bit of a theory that when it comes to Miyazaki's movies and Isao Takahata's movies, I think they're the big two
Yep.
of Studio Ghibli. And out of all the movies that I've watched from them, tackles more of the real world kind of stuff, and
Mhm.
Miyazaki tackles more of the fantastical side of things. That's my theory. I don't think I'm off base on that, right?
I don't think you're off base at all. I think that that has changed a little bit as Miyazaki has gotten older, but definitely throughout their careers, that has been the Takahata, real life, Miyazaki, the fantastical realms.
Yeah, because in my first reaction to My Neighbors the Yamadas, I said in that video, you could not get two more different movies than Princess Mononoke and My Neighbors the Yamadas. One is
Seriously.
this big, fantastical epic about humans versus nature and dominance and all that, and the rest is basically Isao Takahata seemingly telling stories from his childhood. And
Yeah.
though he never explicitly said, "Oh, they're based on my life," I have a feeling that it's definitely geared more towards people who have parents.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get off on a whole tangent about My Neighbors the Yamadas, but I really do think that is the definition of intimate storytelling and personal storytelling. It must be from his experiences in childhood, but I really like that film. I could go on about that movie for a long time too.
Absolutely. Well, that is all for us. Thank you all so much for watching. Shawn, thank you for being a part of this. You have a
Thank you
YouTube
so
channel.
much.
You have a YouTube channel yourself, so go on and talk about it for a beat.
Yeah, so my channel is called Lost in the Reel. I cover pretty much everything, mostly new releases, but I do film and television. Probably my biggest niche, I would say, is talking about hidden gems, movies that maybe not a lot of people have heard of, or that they should really check out. But yeah, I have so much fun doing it, and I hope that people check it out.
Shawn started commenting on my Ghibli videos, and he always left the best comments. And so I was thinking to myself, if I could actually get in touch with this guy, and hopefully we could do something one day. So this is awesome that we were able to get to do something. And knowing that you're a big Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings fan, I have a feeling that we have to get together about that sometime in the future.
I am absolutely down. Just let me know when, Ryan.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. The link to his channel will be in the description of this video, and also the link to his Twitter and social media and all that. And then as far as this channel goes, well, this coming Sunday, next Sunday, I'm going to be pivoting from Studio Ghibli to talk about a trilogy of movies that I think have been slightly overlooked, and those are the Bourne movies. And I'm going to talk about how I think they've kind of gotten forgotten a little bit. But that'll be next Sunday. Until then, if you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam. That's Shawn from Lost in the Reel. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care. See you in the next one.